A $1 billion potential Hollywood return is sitting ready on the calendar for November, but a familiar wave of online noise is already trying to turn the conversation into something else entirely. Johnny Depp's first major studio lead in years arrives this fall through Paramount Pictures as Ebenezer, a dark reimagining of A Christmas Carol directed by T. West. Yet certain corners of social media are already floating the word boycott, as if the jury never spoke and the audience never showed up. The same fans who once filled theaters for Pirates of the Caribbean and Alice in Wonderland now watch the old patterns of public pressure attempt a comeback of their own. The trailer for Ebenezer dropped in late July, and within hours the familiar online machinery started turning again. Johnny Depp appears as the title character in a dark reimagining of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, directed by T. West and scheduled for theaters on November 13, 2026 through Paramount Pictures. The project marks his first major American studio lead role in several years after a stretch of independent and international work that included Jonna DeBerry and the directorial effort Modi, 3 Days on the Wing of Madness. Production wrapped earlier with filming locations in Dublin and London, and the ensemble around him includes Ian McKellen as Jacob Marley, Rupert Grint as Bob Cratchit, Daisy Ridley, Andrea Riseborough, Trammell Tillman, and others. Paramount has positioned the film as a Thanksgiving season release with promotional language that frames the return of a distinctive screen presence. Yet almost immediately certain corners of social media began circulating the word boycott as if the intervening years and the public record of the 2022 Virginia trial had never occurred. That trial ended with a jury finding that Amber Heard had defamed Depp on 3 counts related to her 2018 Washington Post opinion piece, while also finding Depp liable on 1 count related to a statement by his former attorney. The financial awards and the subsequent settlement are part of the public court record. Depp has spoken in earlier interviews about the period when major studio doors closed after the United Kingdom libel case and the subsequent exit from the Fantastic Beasts franchise. In one widely reported conversation, he described the sensation of being asked to resign from a project and the feeling that a boycott was in effect at that time. He also stated later that he no longer thinks much about Hollywood and does not feel the same pressure. Those earlier comments are still quoted whenever a new project surfaces. The current wave of online calls does not appear to originate from the large and consistent audience that has followed his work through the Pirates of the Caribbean films Alice in Wonderland and the many character roles that define 2 decades of box office success. Instead, the noise often comes from accounts that recycle the same set of allegations that were tested in open court and from commentators who treat any new casting announcement as an opportunity to reopen settled arguments. The distinction matters because the people who actually buy tickets and stream the older titles have largely remained supportive. When the first images from the Ebenezer set and the Comic-Con appearance and character circulated, the dominant reaction among longtime viewers was recognition of the familiar physical and emotional commitment Depp brings to exaggerated or tormented figures. The gray hair, the posture, the quiet intensity visible even in short clips were noted more often than any demand to stay away from theaters. This pattern has repeated before. After the 2022 verdict, social media metrics showed massive engagement under hashtags supporting him, while certain traditional media outlets continued framing the story through the original allegations rather than the jury findings. Dior kept the Sauvage campaign running through the most intense period of public pressure, and the fragrance remained a commercial success according to industry reports at the time. That commercial continuity is one concrete data point among others. Another is the simple fact that Paramount greenlit a holiday film with Depp in the central role and invested in a full marketing push, including a surprise Comic-Con activation. Studios do not commit resources to projects they expect large segments of the audience to reject. The budget figures circulating for Ebenezer are in the range of a mid-sized studio production rather than the 9-figure sums associated with the biggest franchise entries of the past decade, yet the cultural conversation around it has already taken on the scale of a larger event. Some of that scale comes from the lingering after effects of the trial coverage, which turned private and legal matters into daily public spectacle. Some of it comes from the way online platforms reward outrage cycles more readily than measured responses. The result is a recurring script in which any new Depp project is immediately met with a minority of voices declaring that the audience should stay home. Those voices rarely acknowledge the actual ticket buying patterns of the previous decade, or the fact that the same audience kept watching the older films and supporting related merchandise long after the headlines moved on. The storytelling inside Ebenezer itself appears to lean into themes of isolation regret and the possibility of change, which is consistent with the source material and with the kinds of roles Depp has often chosen. Whether the finished film succeeds or struggles at the box office will be decided by the people who walk into theaters in November, not by the volume of posts that appear in the months leading up to the release. The same people who once filled seats for the fifth Pirates film and for the Burton collaborations are still the primary economic force behind any project that carries his name. When earlier reports suggested Disney was exploring a Pirates continuation without him, large numbers of those same viewers publicly stated they would simply not attend. That reaction was not manufactured by a studio campaign, it was organic and measurable across platforms. The inverse situation now playing out around Ebenezer shows the same audience protecting the work rather than abandoning it. A small but vocal set of accounts continues to treat every new credit as an affront that requires collective punishment. The larger pattern of actual viewing behavior has not followed that demand. Depp has largely stayed out of the daily online back and forth, focusing instead on the practical work of preparing for the role and appearing in character when the studio asks. The Comic-Con moment in late July was brief and theatrical, and the short clips that spread afterward showed an audience reacting with recognition and amusement rather than protest. That gap between the loudest online claims and the quieter reality of audience response is the part of the story that tends to get lost. The film is finished or nearly finished, the release date is set, the marketing has begun, and the same questions that surfaced years ago are being asked again, as if the intervening evidence and the intervening projects never happened. The people who have followed the entire arc from the early career breakthroughs through the franchise years, through the legal period, and into this latest studio return are in a position to decide for themselves whether the work on screen still holds value. The online calls for a boycott do not change the existence of the finished film or the decision by a major studio to put it into theaters. They simply add another layer of noise around a project that would otherwise be discussed primarily in terms of its performances, its direction, and its place in a long line of Christmas Carol adaptations. The practical test will arrive in November when the lights go down and the audience that has stayed interested through every previous chapter either shows up or does not. Until then, the cycle of announcement reaction and counter reaction continues in the same familiar shape it has taken for several years. The difference this time is that the film itself is already made and the theatrical window is already locked. Whatever the final numbers turn out to be, they will reflect the choices of the people who still regard the body of work as worth their time, rather than the volume of posts that treat every new credit as a referendum on past events. The theatrical test that arrives in November will not be decided by the loudest accounts or the oldest headlines, but by the same quiet decision that has always shaped these moments when people choose whether to spend an evening with a particular performance or walk past it. Ebenezer sits finished or nearly finished with its November 13th release locked through Paramount Pictures, and its dark take on the Dickens story, already carrying the weight of expectation that comes with any high-profile return. The film places Johnny Depp at the center as the miserly figure forced to confront past, present, and future in a version that leans into psychological dread rather than pure seasonal warmth under the direction of Ty West, whose previous work has shown a clear interest in atmosphere and unease. The supporting cast around him brings recognizable faces from other major titles, and the production itself moved through Dublin and London locations earlier in the year, with the kind of practical focus that tends to get lost once the online conversation starts spinning. Yet the conversation has already begun spinning in familiar patterns, where a minority of voices treat the mere existence of the project as something that requires collective rejection. Those voices rarely pause to note that the audience which once packed theaters for the Pirates films and the Burton collaborations has continued to engage with the older work and has shown little sign of vanishing when a new credit appears. The gap between the volume of certain posts and the actual behavior of ticket buyers is not new. It appeared after the 2022 Virginia trial when the jury returned its findings on the defamation claims, and it appeared again whenever reports surfaced about possible franchise returns or independent projects. In each case, the loudest demands for distance were met by a quieter and more consistent interest from people who still wanted to see the work. Depp himself has addressed the earlier period of closed doors in interviews that remain on the record. At the Cannes press conference surrounding Jean du Barry, he spoke about the sensation of being asked to leave a production and the feeling that Boycott had been in effect at that time, while also stating that he no longer thinks about Hollywood in the same way and does not feel the same pressure. Those comments are concrete and available rather than reconstructed. They sit alongside the simple commercial facts that Deere continued the Sauvage campaign through the most intense coverage, and that the fragrance maintained strong sales according to the reports available then. The same practical continuity now shows in Paramount's decision to schedule a holiday film with him in the lead and to stage a Comic-Con activation in character. Studios measure risk carefully, and the choice to move forward suggests they see an audience still willing to show up. The online calls that frame the project as something to be avoided often recycle the same set of allegations that were examined in open court without acknowledging the jury outcomes or the years of subsequent public record. That recycling creates an impression of permanent crisis even as the practical work of making and releasing films continues. The people who have followed the entire path from the early character roles through the franchise years and into the more recent independent stretch are in a position to separate the noise from the finished product. They have already demonstrated that separation by continuing to watch the older titles and by responding to new images with recognition rather than automatic rejection. The short clips from the Comic-Con appearance in late July showed an audience reacting to the physical transformation and the quiet intensity rather than organizing against the screening. That reaction is consistent with the longer pattern in which the work itself has retained its hold even when the surrounding commentary has grown heated. The storytelling inside Ebenezer appears to center on isolation and the possibility of change, which aligns with the source material and with the kinds of inward-focused performances that have marked much of the career. Whether those performances land for contemporary viewers will be decided in the dark of the theater, not in the comment threads that precede the release. The film does not arrive as a 9-figure blockbuster with $1 billion target attached. The circulating budget figures place it in a more modest range typical of a mid-sized studio production, yet the cultural attention around it has already expanded to the scale of a larger event because of the residual weight of earlier coverage. That weight does not erase the existence of the completed work or the decision by a major distributor to put it into theaters on a specific date. It simply adds another layer of static that the audience will either listen to or ignore when the time comes to choose. The same audience that once filled seats for Alice in Wonderland when it crossed the $1 billion mark worldwide and for the later Pirates entries is still the primary economic force. Their choices have never been dictated solely by the volume of posts that demand they stay away. The practical test remains the same as it has always been. The lights go down, the performance begins, and the people who have stayed interested through every previous chapter decide whether the work still holds value for them. Until that moment arrives, the cycle of announcement, reaction, and counter-reaction will continue in the same shape it has taken for years. The difference this time is that the film is already made, the release window is already set, and the decision rests with the viewers who have never required permission from the loudest accounts to keep watching. The film is ready, the date is set, and the choice belongs to the people who have stayed with the work through every chapter. If this look at the real situation around Ebenezer and the noise that always tries to drown it out felt honest to you, then leave a comment with what you plan to do when November arrives. Share it with someone who still cares about the performances rather than the headlines. And if you want more straightforward stories that cut through the static without the forced praise or the recycled outrage, then stay close. The audience has always decided these things in the end.